In 1976, Honda introduced their most upscale car yet, in the form of the Accord three-door hatchback. It was still only 163 inches long on a 94-inch wheelbase, weighing just under 2,000 pounds, initially offered in GL, EX, and SL trim levels. Prices were a bit high for its size, starting around $4,000, but it was fairly well equipped with cloth seats, intermittent wipers, AM/FM radio, and a tachometer standard. It used a 1.6-liter inline-4 with available CVCC, or compound vortex-controlled combustion, and it was rated at 79 horsepower, or 68 net horsepower when it came to the U.S. Offered with a 2-speed Honda-matic, or a 4- or 5-speed manual, it could do the quarter mile in just over 18 seconds and topped out around 100 miles an hour. First-year U.S. sales were over 18,000, but would climb quickly. For 1978, there was a new 1.8-liter option with up to 89 horsepower, or 72 in the U.S. An LX package was added that included power steering and air conditioning, and there was a new 4-door sedan version, 175 inches long on the same wheelbase, and weighing around 2,100 pounds. For 1980, the cars got a 3-speed Honda-matic, and by this point, U.S. sales were over 185,000, making it one of the most successful Japanese models in the U.S. The cars were restyled for 1982, now 166 to 174 inches long on a 97-inch wheelbase, weighing 2,100 to 2,200 pounds. Engines carried over, with the U.S. only getting the 75 horsepower version of the 1.8-liter. And production had started in the U.S., with prices climbing over $7,800 to start, and getting traditional sealed beam headlights, unlike some versions elsewhere. More features were added, including velour interior and electro-gyrocator navigation, a rare option costing more than $2,700. For 1983, a 4-speed automatic became available. The SE package included a stereo cassette player and moonroof, and the LX had cruise control, power windows and door locks, and much more. There was a facelift for 1984, with the hatchback and sedan getting different looks. And soon, fuel injection would be added initially just in models in Japan, with up to 128 horsepower, capable of more than 120 miles an hour, making it a mid-16-second car, while there was an SEI version with 101 horsepower in the U.S. The Accord was restyled again for 1986, up to an 102-inch wheelbase and 175 inches long for the 2-door hatchback, and 179 inches long for the 4-door sedan. And a new for 1987 notchback coupe version was built in the U.S. and exported to other markets, including Japan. Some other markets got an aero deck shooting brake Accord instead of the regular hatchback. Most Accords got flip-up headlights, but some markets didn't. Engines varied by market and now included a 1.6, 1.8, and 2-liter, the only engine offered in the U.S., available in 98 to 122 horsepower tunes, although American versions did not come as well equipped as in some other markets, so as not to compete with the Acura-badged cars, such as the Integra. The cars had double wishbone suspension all around, and 4-wheel anti-lock disc brakes became available. An SEI package returned in 1989, adding alloy wheels, dual exhaust, 4-wheel disc brakes, and much more. Total U.S. sales for the year would exceed 360,000, making it the best-selling car in America, a title it would hold for the next 3 years. But the new Accord for 1990 would grow fully into the mid-size market. Offered in coupe and sedan, it was 185 inches long on a 107-inch wheelbase and 2,700 pounds. U.S. packages shuffled with a more entry-level DX fitted below the LX, and the top sporty SEI model became the EX. Base engine outside the U.S. was a 1.8-liter with 99 horsepower, or a 98 horsepower 2-liter, which was also offered in other tunes, up to 148 horsepower in the SI, also not offered in the U.S. We did, however, get the bigger 2.2-liter, offered in 125 to 130 horsepower tunes, gaining 5 horsepower with the introduction of the inch-longer wagon for 1991. When the SE returned as a slightly decontented version of the EX, with a standard automatic and 5 more horsepower. There was a minor facelift for 1992 when the EX got the SE engine, and the SE was discontinued again, only to return the next year. Also for 1993, there was a U.S. 10th Anniversary Edition, celebrating 10 years of U.S. production, only offered in Frost White, Granada Black Pearl, and Arcadia Green Pearl. It was essentially an LX sedan with several features from the EX, including the alloy wheels, chin spoiler, and ABS. The new Accord for 1994 was wider, exceeding the 67-inch restriction in Japan, but it was an inch shorter, except the wagon, which was up to 187 inches in length. Safety features increased to include dual airbags, side impact protection, and grade logic shift programming for automatics. U.S. packages were back down to DX, LX, and EX, which were the LX, EX, and EXR elsewhere. But in Japan, they had the HF, EXL, VTE, VTL, VTS, and SIR, where engines included a 1.8, 2, and 2.2 liter with 123 to 146 horsepower, or 190 horsepower in the SIR, while the US only got the 2.2 liter in 130 to 145 horsepower tunes. The cars would start to be built in New Zealand, and initially offered as the LXI, EXI, and EXIS, with the latter changing to VTI and VTIS. The Accord in Europe, however, was a different car. It was roughly the same size but narrower, and was actually the Honda Ascot, which was based on the previous generation Accord, and was also the basis for the Rover 600. For 1995, a 2.7-liter, 170 horsepower V6 became available as an option on both the LX and EX, and 1996 would see its mid-cycle minor facelift. There was a special edition Accord for 1997 that included special wheels, a moonroof, CD player, and security system with keyless entry, and more. There were 3 different Accords for the 6th generation. The home market car for 1997 was 183 inches long on a 105-inch wheelbase, back to 67 inches wide, and 2,700 to 2,900 pounds, offered in sedan and wagon. Engines were 1.8 and 2 liters, with 138 to 148 horsepower, or 178 horsepower in the automatic SIR, and 197 horsepower in the 5-speed SIR-T, a high 15-second car capable of more than 150 miles an hour. The European Accord of 1998 was 2 inches wider, 171 inches long on the same 105-inch wheelbase, and 2,700 pounds, offered as a sedan or 5-door hatchback, still based on the Ascot, offered in base S, the better-equipped SE, and the top-end ES, later renamed SE Executive, initially with the same 1.8 and 2-liter engines, with 134 to 145 horsepower. But it would soon get a smaller 113 horsepower 1.6 liter and a Type R that used a 209 horsepower version of the 2.2 liter for a low 15-second quarter mile and more than 145 miles an hour. They would also get a version of the American-made Coupe, which was 187 inches long on the same wheelbase and 2,900 pounds, only as the ES with an 145 horsepower 2-liter or 197 horsepower 3-liter V6. U.S. versions of the coupe were offered in LX or EX trim levels, and like the sedan got a base 2.3-liter with 150 horsepower, or the optional 3-liter V6 with 200 horsepower. The Accord sedan sold in America and elsewhere were bigger, another inch wider and 189 inches long on a 107-inch wheelbase, weighing up to 3,200 pounds. For 1999, the Japanese cars got an SIR wagon that used an 190 horsepower 2.3-liter. And for 2000, there was a Euro R package that used an 190 horsepower 2.2-liter. For 2000, the US and similar cars would get a facelift, and the European models would get one the next year, gaining a better equipped Type V and a Sport Appearance package. For 2001, the Accord was once again the best-selling car in America, but only for the year. For the next generation, there were only 2 versions. The North American versions were about an inch longer and wider. For 2003, the base 4-cylinder was now a more advanced 2.4-liter, providing 160 horsepower, and the V6 was up to 240 horsepower, which made the 6-speed EX a sub-15-second car, capable of 155 miles an hour. And a variation of the sedan was built in Japan as the Honda Inspire. The other Accord was also longer, 184 inches long for the sedan and 187 inches long for the wagon, Engines included a base 2-liter with 150 horsepower and an optional 2.4-liter with 127 horsepower. All-wheel drive was available, and Japan got a Euro R for 217 horsepower, now a low 15-second car capable of more than 145 miles an hour, while some other markets got an available 2.2-liter diesel. And a variation of this 2.4-liter car would come to North America as the Acura TSX. In 2004, the so-called North American car would get the smaller 148 horsepower 2-liter for the South American market. 2005 would see the introduction of the Accord Hybrid, using a 255 horsepower version of the 3-liter V6 from the Odyssey minivan, mated to a 16 horsepower or 14 kilowatt electric motor. There would be more updates for 2006, including a minor facelift inside and out, and power bumps for both engines, to 166 and 244, and there was a 30th anniversary edition. The new Accord hit most markets in 2008 and was now using the 107-inch wheelbase and was 186 to 187 inches long, still offered in sedan and wagon. For the most part, engines carried over with 154 to 203 horsepower, but the US version still sold as the Acura TSX and got a 3.5-liter V6 for 280 horsepower, and the European Sporty Type S used an 180 horsepower 2.2-liter diesel, while the North American Accord was now being built in a half a dozen different countries, and still selling in Japan as the Inspire. The sedan was up to 195 inches long on a 110-inch wheelbase, and the coupe 191 inches long on a 108-inch wheelbase, nearly 2 inches wider, and weight ranged from 3,200 to 3,600 pounds. Only offered in LX and EX, initially with 177 to 190 horsepower from the 2.4-liter 4, and 268 to 271 horsepower from its 3.5-liter V6. 2010 would see the introduction of the Accord Cross Tour crossover 5-door hatchback. Based on the North American Accord, it was 196 inches long on a 110-inch wheelbase and 4,100 pounds. Engines were the same, but some other markets got a 244 horsepower 3-liter V6. The coupe and sedan would get updated for 2011, getting a facelift and adding features such as steering wheel controls, USB connectors, and a rear-view camera. The Cross Tour would get a facelift for 2013, but sales were dismal, and it was soon discontinued. Around the same time, the next generation car arrived, returning to a global design for the Accord. It included Bluetooth and an 8-inch display screen. The sedan was 191 inches long on a 109-inch wheelbase, and the coupe 189 inches long on a 107-inch wheelbase. A CVT, or continuously variable transmission, became available, and although engines carried over, they varied by market. These engines included a 2-liter providing 153 horsepower as the base engine in most markets, but the US got a 185 horsepower 2.4-liter. The 257 horsepower 3-liter V6 was only offered in China, while other markets kept the 3.5-liter, with roughly 278 horsepower. Trim levels included LX, EX, Touring, and Sport. There was also a hybrid version using the 2-liter engine, for a combined 196 horsepower. That would gain a plug-in option the next year. They would get a facelift for 2017 and gained Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and the hybrid would be up to 212 horsepower. The 10th generation car arrived for 2018 in most markets and was only offered as a sedan. It was 193 inches long on a 111-inch wheelbase and 3,100 to 3,400 pounds. Lighter thanks to its extensive use of aluminum and smaller displacement engines. Base engine became a 1.5-liter turbo for 187 to 192 horsepower, with an optional 2-liter turbo for 252 horsepower, while the hybrid was relatively unchanged. There was a minor facelift for 2020, with a slight shuffling of options and packages, and by this point had fallen out of the top 10 in sales. The most recent Accord arrived in 2023, once again getting longer, up to 196 inches, or 33 inches longer than the original Accord, on a 17-inch longer wheelbase, now only offered as a 2-liter hybrid, or with the 192 horsepower 1.5-liter turbo, and the only transmission was now the CVT. For 2025, the EX became the SE and gained a blackout treatment. And although there has been some decontenting in recent years, it is still generally considered to be one of the best mid-size cars on the market. So as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below and like and subscribe.